of Orwellian-sounding strategic authorities, which are closer to her and closer to Whitehall. This announcement is a huge upheaval of local government right across the country, but this was not a government manifesto commitment.
Angela Rayner's decision to postpone local elections has set off a political firestorm. With 5 million voters affected and accusations of democratic subversion flying, Parliament is in uproar. But what's really behind this controversial move? Is it a genuine attempt to improve local services or a calculated power grab? The answers may surprise you.
There are concerns about the potential power drain of backbench local councillors if local government is seen increasingly as a delivery agent.
Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Angela Rayner's grand plan for devolution is unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. She's been touting this scheme as a way to unlock growth and shift power out of Westminster. But is it really all it's cracked up to be?
It is a very worrying day for democracy in this country. She is making local government less accountable to the people and more accountable to her.
Let's peel back the layers of this political onion and see what's really going on. On the surface, Rayner's plan sounds like a dream come true for local communities, who wouldn't want more control over their own affairs. But here's where things get sticky. While she's busy selling this idea as a power shift away from Westminster, her opponents are crying foul. They're not buying the devolution line one bit. Instead, they're accusing Rayner of pulling a fast one, creating a new tier of government that's actually closer to Whitehall, not further away.
Of Orwellian-sounding strategic authorities, which are closer to her and closer to Whitehall.
Now let's think about this for a second. How can you claim to be devolving power while simultaneously centralizing control? It's like telling your teenager they have more freedom, but then installing a tracking app on their phone. Something doesn't add up here, folks.
These are her choices, and she has put a gun to the head of local councils to force them into a decision with little regard for local people.
Dr. Andy Mock, a political scientist who's been digging into this mess, has some interesting thoughts. In a recent paper, he warns about a potential power drain from local councillors. Imagine your local representatives, the people you elected to fight for your community's interests, suddenly finding themselves sidelined. It's like being invited to a party only to discover you're on waiter duty. But here's where it gets really interesting. What's the real motive behind this restructuring? Is it truly about empowering local communities? Or is there something else at play? The more you look at it, the more it seems like Rayner's plan could actually lead to less local accountability, not more. Think about it. If power is being concentrated in these new regional bodies, who's really calling the shots? It's not your local councillor anymore. It's some faceless bureaucrat in a shiny new office, probably closer to London than your town hall.
And these are for her to use as a pawn to implement this government's deeply unpopular socialist agenda.
And who are they answering to? Hint, it's probably not you. This whole situation is starting to look less like devolution and more like a magic trick.
We have a proud record of supporting devolution where we worked with local people and delivered devolution from the ground up rather than this top-down approach.
You know, the kind where the magician distracts you with one hand while doing the real trick with the other. Rayner's waving the local power flag with one hand, but with the other, she might just be tightening Whitehall's grip on the reins.
We are totally against her plans to abolish every county council and every district council in England.
Just when you thought Rayner's political theatrics couldn't get more outrageous, she pulls her most audacious move yet. How do you make 5 million voters disappear without anyone noticing? It's not magic, it's something far more sinister. Rayner's grand plan for devolution has taken a dark turn, and the consequences are staggering. Let's talk numbers for a moment. 5 million. That's not just a statistic, it's the voice of entire communities silenced in one fell swoop. Rayner's decision to postpone local elections isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's a full-scale assault on democracy. But who benefits from this democratic deficit? Certainly not the voters who've been robbed of their right to have a say in their local governance. Rayner claims this restructuring is urgent, necessary even, but if it's so crucial, why are opposition leaders up in arms? The answer lies in the accusations flying around Parliament.
Yet in her very statement, she admits that all two-tier areas should be making plans to move to simpler structures.
Bullying councils into compliance, they say. It's a damning indictment of a government that seems more interested in pushing through its agenda than listening to the concerns of local authorities.
Not doing away with a two-tier system, she is simply creating a new tier of Orwellian-sounding strategic authorities.
But the real kicker, this isn't just about voting rights. The ripple effects of Rayner's decision are set to hit every council employee in two-tier areas. Imagine showing up to work one day, only to be told you need to reapply for your own job. It's not just unsettling, it's downright disruptive. And who pays the price? The very people relying on these local services. Planning delays, service interruptions, it's a recipe for chaos at the community level. Now, let's talk money. Rayner's been waving around promises of more money in people's pockets, but opposition leaders are calling her bluff.
Diktats imposed on local people rather than the locally led approach we followed, which are prone to problems, especially when rushed.
How exactly does this massive upheaval translate to savings for taxpayers? It's a question that's met with deafening silence from Rayner's camp. But here's where it gets really interesting. Experts are sounding the alarm about a potential financial time bomb. They're warning of reckless asset disposal and spending sprees by councils scrambling to manage their finances amid this upheaval. It's like watching a game of financial musical chairs, with councils rushing to secure their assets before the music stops. The rushed nature of this restructuring is a red flag for anyone paying attention.
This announcement is a huge upheaval of local government right across the country, but this was not a government manifesto commitment.
Mismanagement of assets, financial instability, these aren't just hypothetical scenarios, they're very real risks that could leave councils, and by extension, local communities, in dire straits. As Angela Rayner's devolution revolution unfolds, it's becoming clear that this grand plan might be more of a cautionary tale than a triumphant reform. The postponement of local elections has sparked an outrage, with Reform UK leading the charge against what they see as a blatant assault on democracy. Rupert Lowe, the party's MP for Great Yarmouth, didn't mince words when he called it an arrogant scam that undermines the very foundation of local governance.
The reality is that this is delegation, not devolution. Not devolution, but a clear centralisation.
Lowe's passionate declaration that democracy is inconvenient, democracy is costly, democracy is awkward, but it matters resonates with those who fear Rayner's restructuring is centralizing power rather than devolving it. The planned protest at Great Yarmouth Town Hall shows that the battle for local democracy is far from over. As the dust settles on this political upheaval, voters must remain vigilant. The question now is whether Rayner's vision will unlock billions for frontline services as promised, or whether it will leave local communities voiceless and at the mercy of Westminster's whims.